Since I spent a fair amount of time detailing out the engine and some of the surrounding parts, I figured I'd do the same for the interior and will probably do the same for the rest of the parts. Now, first of all, we're just going to start off with cutting out all of the parts from the sprues that we're going to need for the interior specifically, and then cleaning them up a little bit here and there with some sandpaper, some sanding sticks, just making them nice and clean and removing some of those imperfections. Once that is said and done, we can move them into the spray booth for a couple coats of primer. The primer has been applied, so I could move on to applying some gloss black to certain areas that I dechromed previously and will be painting in a metal-like finish later on. For the main interior itself, I'm going to go for a two-tone with black and / carbon fiber and a saddle tan for all of the leather parts surrounding it. So the main highlights will be in a saddle tan, like the seats, some parts for the dashboard, and some of the other areas will just be painted in a flat black or receive some carbon fiber decals. Those parts that I previously dechromed and then painted with the gloss black, I will now spray with a titanium silver for that metal-like look that these parts have on the actual Paganis. The first round of airbrushing has been completed, so I set the parts to cure overnight and then moved on the next day to masking some of them off for a second and maybe even third color to be added to it. The door panels themselves will be mainly made out of carbon fiber, so the base layer was painted in a black, but that center piece is supposed to be in the same color as the leather for the seats. So I decided to mask it off and spray a nice coat of primer first, give it an identical base coat color as the seats had before I applied the saddle tan. Now, if I would just paint the saddle tan over the black, this tan color would look a lot different and a lot darker than the ones on the seats, and I wanted them to match, so a base coat of primer to receive that same base as the seats had made this match perfectly. Some other parts had previously received some black as a base coat for the carbon fiber decals to go on top of, but certain areas needed to be painted in that same titanium silver. So again, a lot of masking and then a little bit of painting. With the larger paint job now completed, I could start unmasking some of these parts and then move on to adding additional details to them. So on the engine itself, there were two parts that needed some carbon fiber, and the interior, that is a bit of a different story and actually needed a lot more carbon fiber. Pretty much 90% of the door panel needed to be covered in it, some bits for the center console, the backs of the seats, and also the door sills in the main interior tub, all needed to be done in carbon fiber. Now, I'm not going to take you through all of them, as I've done loads of videos on the channel before on carbon fiber decals and the application of it, and I still have quite a bit more to do for some of the exterior components, so that is all to come in the future. For now, it's just the application of the main part for the door panel itself, and then we're quickly going to go through it and start moving on to some detailing with a bit of a brush and some silver and black paints here and there to highlight some certain areas. Alongside all of the carbon fiber decals from SK Decals, there were of course a couple decals from the kit itself that needed to be applied as well, so while I was in the decaling mood anyway, I figured I'd complete that stage. Aoshima sent me out the photo etch set for this kit as well, and in that set there was also a small sheet with metal transfer stickers. These were applied on some pieces above the radio and also some of the surrounds around the speakers behind the rear seats. Well, rear seats, this one has only front seats, so behind the seats. The main airbrushing, decaling, and additional details with the metal stickers has now been completed, so I could move on to adding final details with a small brush and some silver paints to highlight certain areas and finish pieces off to make them look a bit more realistic and completed, and also add some black paints later for the final touches before the assembly could start. I gave the decals and paint a couple of hours to dry before I could start the final assembly. This was all done using some super glue from Bob Smith Industries, their Super Gold Plus formula, so this goes rather quickly and everything pretty much just falls together and stays in place permanently. Underneath the gear shifter there was a small pin that was supposed to align with a hole in the center console, but somehow it didn't really want to mesh, and therefore I simply just cut it off and glued it in place. The door handle is now on the door, and that finishes off the interior for now. Now the actual door panels and dashboard do not glue onto the main base piece for the interior. I just decided to go with them for now to finish off the interior by itself, and then later on start assembling it the way it should be. So this is just a dry fit, putting them in place to give you a nice overview of what the interior looks like for now.